The US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran began on February 28, 2026. The operation is far from over, but already one thing is obvious. Things are not going as planned. The original goal was to hit 1,200 targets. As of today, 6,000 have been struck, and Iran is still punching back hard, reaching all the way to the glittering skyscrapers of Dubai and American bases in Kuwait. Most of the Iranian fleet has been wrecked, yet the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. A global oil crisis is already looming, and right at this very moment, Trump announces that now it won't be Iran blockading the strait. It'll be the Americans. Which is especially rich, considering just a week ago he was tweeting in all caps that shipping had to reopen. This man is either a genius or a lunatic, maybe both. In any case, his plan has belly flopped. If the plan was to bring Iran to its knees, that is. But what if I told you Iran was never really the main target at all, and blockaded Strait of Hormuz is just a lever? In that case, the operation may be unfolding exactly as intended. Call it another crackpot theory if you like. I don't mind it. In a world this unhinged theories are called for, and mine didn't come from nowhere. Literally yesterday I read a book, and suddenly the pieces started snapping together. Today's quarrel in the Middle East may not be about the Strait of Hormuz, or even avoiding a global fuel shock. The stakes are much bigger. We may be talking about the future architecture of world order. So, let me explain, starting from the beginning. In 1920, the great science fiction writer H.G. Wells visited Russia. In the Kremlin, he met Vladimir Lenin, and after a long conversation, gave him a famous label, the Kremlin Dreamer. Well, the 21st century has produced a new dreamer, the Davos Dreamer. Before you stands Klaus Schwab, creator and presiding spirit of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Leaving aside the many sexual harassment allegations, we're not opening that drawer in this video. He presents himself as one of the kindest men on earth, because, like Lenin, he dreams of reorganizing humanity, delivering happiness and justice for all. And just like Lenin, he has a plan. That plan is laid out in his book, The Great Reset, written at the height of the pandemic in 2020. The book disguises itself as dry academic analysis, and Lord, it can be a slog. But read between the lines, and you start sensing something bigger. In terms of intended historical impact, Schwab seems to place it somewhere in the lineage of the Communist Manifesto or the United States Declaration of Independence. So, let's flip through it. Like any seasoned propagandist, Schwab starts with things difficult to argue against. The world, he says, has become interconnected as never before. The Greek debt crisis of 2010 nearly dragged the entire economy of the European Union toward the abyss, while a drought in Brazil can cause hunger in China. Brazil is the main provider of soybeans for pig farms in China, in case you didn't know. From this comes his metaphor, a cruise ship with countless cabins. The ship is the planet. Each cabin is a country. And if the ship hits an iceberg, we all go down together. Locking yourself inside your cabin and saying, "Not my problem," won't save you. In the modern world, that's a you problem approach simply doesn't work. All problems and threats are shared now. Also, Outworld become frighteningly fast. A brief, nostalgic detour. The author of this video grew up in Russia in the 1990s, in that prehistoric age before the internet. Back then we had a joke. In some remote Siberian village, they had just gotten drunk celebrating victory over Napoleon Bonaparte, because the news had only now arrived. That was the old world, cozy and slow. That world is gone. Today, a K-pop group from South Korea can become a global phenomenon overnight. But problems move fast too. The pandemic made that brutally clear. No one imagined how quickly it would swallow the globe, and whatever governments did to correct the situation, the disease always seemed one move ahead. So, the conclusion appears obvious. If global challenges have become unprecedented in scale and complexity, then new forms of governance must catch up. Trying to run this world through nation-states alone is like trying to run Grand Theft Auto 6 on a calculator. What's needed in this vision are institutions above national governments, coordinating countries from the top. Call it global management, call it world government if you want to be dramatic. At the simplest level, it could deal with stuff like sending medical masks from countries drowning in surplus to countries running out, And this supranational order, in Schwab's vision, isn't just for pandemics. The pandemic is merely the obvious case study. The deeper mission is social justice. Because COVID exposed the ugliest side of modern capitalism. A nurse risking her life in a COVID ward earns a salary that barely keeps the lights on. Meanwhile, some hedge fund manager, melting into a leather chair worth more than her yearly income, presses a button, shorts the market, and collects a bonus off human misery. Is that morally right? But inequality isn't just a moral issue, it's a political time bomb. A quick reminder where that road can lead. This is the life of the Russian nobility in 1916. This is ordinary Russians in 1916. And this is the Russian Revolution of 1917. Now scale that up to the planet. This is Dubai, and this is Somalia. This is Manhattan, and these are the poor quarters of Delhi. You see where this is going? If rich countries do not want, one fine day, to find the populations of poor countries at their metaphorical gates, with metaphorical pitchforks and torches, which may be nuclear at that point, they must preemptively share their wealth. The West must take responsibility for addressing the economic problems of the third world in the name of global stability. But the government of any single country will never willingly agree to that kind of redistribution. And in fairness, why should it? A president answers to the citizens who elected him, not to humanity in the abstract. And precisely for that reason, in this logic, separate national governments must eventually give way to some unified global authority, a world government, if we stop being shy about the phrase, which rolls up its sleeves and handles redistribution on a planetary scale. That would be task number one. Task number two would be slowing down economic growth. And yes, you heard that right. In Schwab's view, we may be moving toward a zero-growth economy anyway. Population growth is slowing, societies are aging, and none of that exactly screams economic boom. But if that isn't enough, growth must be slowed artificially. Because growth, he argues, always breeds inequality. Take the United Kingdom in the mid-19th century. Factories are popping up like mushrooms after rain. Textiles are flooding out to Indian colonies. Growth is roaring. And what's happening in India at the same time? Local weavers are losing livelihoods en masse and starving. As one contemporary has put it, the bones of the cotton weavers are bleaching the plains of India. And it works in reverse too. Amazon and Google chasing another 1% rise in stock price because Wall Street apparently never sleeps and never feels full. Vacuum up global engineering talent. Brilliant IT specialists from India, China, or Korea move to California instead of building markets back home, strengthening their own economies. Growth always widens the gap, which is exactly the opposite of what Schwab wants. But capitalism is built on the idea of growth, one might argue. You buy a stock because you expect it to be worth more next year. Otherwise, why bother? You invest in a factory expecting profit. Otherwise, you may as well spend the money at the nearest bar. Well, maybe not all in one heroic evening, but you get my point. So, how does any of this function in a zero-growth economy? Who invests? Who builds? Who opens new industries if the central incentive, let's be honest and call it greed, gets pulled out of the machine? Schwab's answer is MMT, or modern monetary theory, which is its own peculiar monster. By the way, we're planning a separate video on that, because it deserves one. And if you're enjoying this so far, would you please hit subscribe now? Seriously, it'll help you catch the next episode, and it helps us enormously with growing the channel. Thanks in advance. Anyway, if I had to boil MMT down to the nutshell version, the scheme looks roughly like this. In the new world, companies no longer raise money by selling shares and seducing investors with promises of endless future growth. Instead, they get money from the state, and the state's money is effectively limitless because it controls the printing press. It can create money out of thin air. But wait, you may ask, clutching your wallet, wouldn't that cause inflation? Relax, Schwab would say. If inflation starts running hot, the state simply pulls excess money back out through taxes. Meanwhile, corporations are pushed or compelled to spend much of their profits on social goals: schools, kindergartens, hospitals, environmental protection. Growth for growth's sake gets put on a leash. In return, companies receive stability and permanent state support while surrendering much of their independence. Notice what just happened. The state replaces market mechanisms, takes business under its wing or under its boot, depending on your philosophical bend, decides who earns what and even what should be produced. That does sound suspiciously like communism, doesn't it? And speaking of communism, one of Schwab's favorite ideas circles around a world where things stop being private property, and you, as that famous quote goes, own nothing and are happy. Fortunately, he doesn't go all the way to communal wives and collective child rearing. Schwab uses more practical examples. Take cars. From an ecological point of view, universal car sharing may be far more efficient. The same car could serve 3 or 4 families, and global emissions would drop significantly. The problem is, people get attached to property. Let me be honest, I freaking love my car. It's my old friend, my warhorse. We've been through things together, and if you want to take it away from me, you may as well remove my secondary sexual characteristics while you're at it. And a lot of people feel exactly like that, which means the reforms Schwab imagines won't glide in. They'll meet resistance. And resistance comes in 2 flavors: active resistance, protests, barricades, maybe the occasional party where Molotov cocktails are served, or passive resistance, pack your bags and move. And that means, for Schwab's vision to work, 2 things become necessary: control and universality. Control is the easy part. Your company doesn't want to participate in socially beneficial initiatives? Fine. The state takes it over naturally for the common good. You don't want to trade your personal car for cheerful little car-sharing pods? Oops, your social credit score just lost 10 points. And, conveniently for Schwab, many of the tools for this kind of control already exist. And, some would argue, were test-driven during the pandemic. Take the apps developed in Singapore, tracking whether a person was infected, where they moved, whom they contacted. That already happened. And what, in principle, would stop governments, under the holy banner of public health, from requiring everyone to wear bracelets monitoring heartbeat and temperature? Now, imagine that bracelet notices your pulse spikes when someone suggests surrendering your beloved car. Elevated heart rate, increased blood pressure. Oops. Potential ideological deviation detected, and suddenly you're under closer scrutiny. Sounds dystopian? Well, take it up with Schwab. He himself gives an example like this in his book. And in such a world, active resistance starts looking almost quaint. Barricades against robot dogs and police drones, throwing cobblestones at algorithms. Come on! Which leaves the second route: escape. Imagine 2 neighboring countries. In one, business is suffocated by punishing taxes. Privacy has been sacrificed to the common good, and life feels administered down to the molecule. In the other, things still function more or less the old-fashioned way. Well, of course, people from the first country would migrate to the second, and businesses too. And here comes the fork in the road. Option 1. Close the borders, turn country A into North Korea. But that can't really be Schwab's endgame, because his whole model depends on an interconnected world, not billions of people living in separate prison cells. Which leaves option 2. Turn country B into a clone of country A. Make the rules universal, so that you may move, but you cannot escape. A brave new world with no outside. And that means, if Schwab's vision is to work, supranational structures become necessary. Something like an octopus, invisible tentacles wrapped around the planet, coordinating policy across countries. Conspiracy theorists, of course, say such structures either already exist or are under construction. Naturally, they come disguised as harmless institutions. But start digging, they say, and you will find institutions linked in one way or another to the World Economic Forum. Those stretch from the World Health Organization and the United Nations, all the Young Global Leaders Organization. The latter is especially revealing. Formally, it's a leadership networking program. But in the imagination of conspiracy theorists, it's a school for a future world government. Regular participants in the World Economic Forum include heads of investment funds, CEOs, prime ministers, and their shared mission, if one reads Klaus Schwab carefully between the lines, is nothing less than constructing global totalitarianism. Naturally, all for the common good. And yes, of course, they would never use such power in their own interests. Perish the thought, not the slightest doubt. Now, I don't want to overplay the conspiracy angle, so let's treat it as a working hypothesis. suppose, just suppose, this is roughly how things are, then what we are living through may be a kind of invisible schism between, broadly speaking, new elites nurtured in Davos and old elites, presidents who think they answer first to their voters, politicians for whom personal freedom is still the highest value, business owners not particularly excited about becoming marionettes of some global administrative machine. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dressing traditional elites in angelical halos, but compared with the architects of a digitized, blockchain-flavored communism of the future, they start looking like pretty straightforward fellows. And now, let's return to the crazy theory I promised at the beginning. What if Donald Trump is, in this framing, a representative of the old world, and his real target is not Iran at all, but the so-called globalists, entrenched above all in the European Union? Then suddenly, his chaotic moves begin to look less chaotic. Trump has effectively refused to guarantee Europe's security from potential military threat. Through his actions in Iran, he is helping trigger a massive energy crisis for Europe. And the question of Greenland is still on the table. Under those conditions, all of Schwab's noble causes become secondary overnight. Zero growth economics? To hell with it. We need military production, and we need lots of it. The green agenda? To hell with it. We need to keep the lights on through winter, and frankly, restarting nuclear plants in Germany wouldn't be the worst place to begin. Aid to poor countries? First, keep ourselves from becoming one. And once politics shifts into survival mode, international initiatives, NGO committees, informal wealth redistribution networks, all of it starts losing weight, and the defenders of the old order climb back into the saddle. So, what do you make of it? Does this logic hold together? Is it nonsense? Is it unsettlingly plausible? If it makes sense to you, leave a like. If you're ready to argue, and I suspect many of you are, I'll see you in the comments. And if you want to hear about another remarkable thinker whose ideas supposedly shape Russian policy, yes, some claim Vladimir Putin literally draws on his philosophy and decision-making, we've got a video on that right here.